a political volcano in Geneva. The US shouts about progress, Zelensky issues an ultimatum. Russia remains silent while Medinsky weaves intrigues. Donbas, referendum, mirror withdrawal, red lines have been drawn. Zelensky is on the verge of a fateful decision. The armed forces of Ukraine have received orders, territories, everything is being decided. France, Germany, Italy, and Britain burst into the negotiations. The Kremlin remains silent and lowers expectations. The stakes are at their highest. The fate of Donbas, the peace agreement, and the people's trust. The intrigue is growing, the eyes of the whole world are on Geneva. A political game on the edge. I'll tell you all the details in a moment. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. I'm Darina Hutsakalo, and here are the latest events. A new round of trilateral negotiations between Ukraine, the United States, and Russia has concluded in Geneva, Switzerland. The meeting took place against the backdrop of a new large-scale strike by Russia and statements from Donald Trump about the need for Kyiv to sit down at the negotiating table as soon as possible. However, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff stated that there has been progress in the negotiations regarding Ukraine. On the X network, he wrote about the success of the current U.S. administration in bringing the parties to the conflict together, which led to significant progress.
The United States acted as a mediator in the third round of trilateral negotiations with Ukraine and Russia. Both sides agreed to inform their leaders and continue working towards reaching an agreement. President Trump's success in bringing both sides of this war closer together has led to significant progress. We are proud to work under his leadership to stop the killings in this terrible conflict. Both sides agreed to inform their leaders and continue working on the agreement.
The head of the Ukrainian delegation, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council Rustem Umerov, reported after the negotiations that the joint part of the meeting had concluded. The work continued in groups according to specific areas.
The discussions focused on practical issues and the mechanics of possible solutions. As of today, both the political and military blocs have completed their work.
In addition, Umerov thanked the American partners for their constructive cooperation and willingness to work at a steady pace.
About the results of the first day of negotiations in Geneva. Today, the President of Ukraine will deliver a report. In the morning, the political and military groups will continue their work.
In addition, after the first day, Umerov held a separate meeting with representatives from the USA, France, the UK, Germany, Italy, and Switzerland. The parties discussed the results of the first round and agreed on approaches for further steps.
It is important to maintain a common vision and coordination of actions between Ukraine, the USA, and Europe. Is there an understanding of shared responsibility for the outcome? We continue our work.
After the first day of the meeting, President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Ukraine reaffirms its readiness to cease strikes and move toward a peace agreement, but expects a clear position from Russia.
The guys definitely need to raise the issue of these strikes. The question is, first and foremost, for the American side, which proposed that both US and Russia refrain from strikes. Ukraine is ready. We do not need this war.
He emphasized that Ukraine is not interested in continuing the war and is acting in a reciprocal manner, defending its state and independence. The president added that the key question remains with Russia, whether it is ready for genuine diplomacy and peace, and whether there will be consequences for continuing missile and drone attacks. Moreover, the head of state stated that he is ready to discuss the withdrawal of the armed forces of Ukraine from Donbas. But at the same time, Russia must also withdraw its troops to the same extent, distance. Zelensky noted that Washington and Kyiv have agreed that any agreement must be put to a referendum of the Ukrainian people. At the same time, the president expressed the opinion that if the agreement stipulates that the Ukrainian side simply withdraws from Donbas, sacrificing sovereignty and the citizenship of the people living there, society will not support it.
Emotionally, people will never forgive this. Never. They will not forgive me. They will not forgive the United States. This is part of our country, all these citizens. The flag, the land.
If the agreement simply freezes the current front line in Donbas, as is planned in the two other regions where fighting continues, Zelensky believes that the people of Ukraine will accept it. I
think that if we include in the document that we remain where we are, on the line of contact, then people will support it in a referendum. That's my opinion.
Notably, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, allowed for the possibility of his participation in new presidential elections if they are held in parallel with the referendum on the peace agreement. Zelensky suggested that any elections could take place under conditions of a fragile ceasefire. In such a scenario, he is considering the possibility of being a candidate.
It will depend on the people. We'll see what they want.
U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker noted that at the meeting in Geneva, everything comes down to the issue of territory. It is the most difficult one. At the same time, the American diplomat described the negotiations as detailed and very productive. This
war must end. The bloodshed must stop, as President Trump clearly stated. But at the same time, these are very complex and tangled issues. As Steve Witkoff said a couple of weeks ago, it all comes down to one question: territories. And this will be the most difficult, the hardest moment.
In addition, France, Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom have sent their representatives to Geneva. The national security advisors of these countries are monitoring the negotiations and are expected to meet with the Ukrainian and US delegations. However, there have been no comments from the Russian side so far, although the Kremlin has urged people not to expect a breakthrough or even any news from the negotiations in Geneva. I
don't think we should expect any news.
Moscow has renewed its delegation at the negotiations and this time, among others, sent the well-known Kremlin loyalist Vladimir Medinsky, who has already earned a dubious reputation in political circles. Medinsky also took part in previous attempts to negotiate peace back in Istanbul. However, it all ended in failure. Meanwhile, American and Dutch pilots are already defending Ukrainian skies flying F-16 fighter jets. More details about this in the following report.
NATO troops are already in Ukraine, at least the pilots are. According to the publication Intelligence Online, which cites its own sources, an entire squadron of foreign pilots has been created in Ukraine to help the armed forces of Ukraine repel air attacks, shooting down missiles and drones almost every day. According to journalists, the squadron was created recently under strict secrecy to operate the new F-16s. This unit now plays an extremely important role in protecting the skies over the capital and the Kyiv region, which is constantly under attack from the Russians.
Pilots of the international F-16 unit often patrol the area during nightly Russian attacks to ensure a faster response to aerial threats and to maximize radar coverage. The most significant contribution of Western veterans to Ukraine's air defense structure, their experience and skills in using the fighter jet's high-precision sensors, particularly the sniper targeting pod, are invaluable. Lloyd Martin. The ultra-precise electro-optical infrared system is used for long-range identification, tracking fast-moving targets, and striking in adverse weather conditions.
And it is specifically about veterans, not active-duty military pilots. The report states that, along with Ukrainians, the flight group also includes American pilots with extensive combat experience. In Afghanistan, there are also former Dutch military personnel in the squadron.
The Dutch, as they say, have been through it. Special courses, special training, have logged many flight hours and are carrying out combat missions in the skies over Ukraine.
Russia reacted to this news with outright hysteria. Immediately, across the border, they declared that this was a violation of all norms and rules. However, the very fact of foreign military personnel serving in the armed forces of Ukraine fully complies with all international agreements.
This is normal. It happened practically during World War II, and not only then, when pilots were used, there was a Polish squadron in Britain, and not just that. So this is a normal approach when pilots and people who are ready to help Ukraine are used in this way.
It is worth noting that the pilots from the US and the Netherlands did not join the armed forces of Ukraine but signed temporary contracts for a period of 6 months. If desired, the documents can be extended. The news also drew a response in Ukraine. The spokesperson for the Air Force noted that the information about a foreign squadron is just rumors. However, he did not directly deny the journalist's report. Instead, he pointed out that it is Ukrainian pilots who are showing the best results in Ukrainian skies.
I want to say that it is our pilots flying in our skies, and they are showing such results that foreigners are simply amazed at how skillful they are, and how effectively can we use the types of equipment that have been provided to us by friendly countries.
At the same time, it is worth noting that the effectiveness of Ukrainian aviation in shooting down enemy targets has indeed increased. It is not known whether this is related to foreigners at the controls of our F-16S, but on the night of February 17th, during a massive Russian attack, our air defense showed phenomenal results. 20 out of 20 Kach 101 missiles were destroyed. All 4 Iskander missiles and more than 360 drones were also shot down.
Our crews did a great job, especially on foreign aircraft, including the F-16S and also the Mirages. Today, a significant number of missiles were destroyed specifically by aviation methods, as they say, through interception by fighter jets.
Analysts believe that such results may be directly related to the arrival of Western specialists who have brought the use of Ukrainian fighter jets to a new technological level. At the same time, this allowed the entire fleet of aircraft to be used, which had previously been idle due to a shortage of pilots.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
And here's another sensation. The Ukrainian armed forces reclaimed a record area of Ukrainian land in just 5 days. This is over 200 square kilometers, which is equivalent to what the enemy captured during the entire last December. How was this achieved, and can this trend be sustained? Let's keep watching.
Last week, Ukraine achieved its greatest successes on the battlefield in the past 2.5 years. From Wednesday, February 11th to Sunday, February 15th, the armed forces of Ukraine managed to reclaim 201 square kilometers. This was reported by the American Institute for the Study of War. The territory that was reclaimed is almost equal to what Russia captured in December. One of the main reasons the Ukrainian army succeeded was due to communication problems among Russian troops. These Ukrainian counterattacks are likely taking advantage of the recent blocking of Russian troops' access to Starlink, which, according to Russian military bloggers, is causing communication and command issues on the battlefield. The Institute for the Study of War. Ukraine has managed to regain control over small settlements along the Yanchur and Haicha rivers in the Oleksandrivka and Huliaipol directions. In the Zaporizhzhia region, this is the largest area of land recaptured by the armed forces of Ukraine in such a short period since the start of the counteroffensive in June 2023.
This operation is considered to be of quite significant importance. Firstly, this is not a counteroffensive, but rather an offensive operation of an operational tactical scale, and significant forces have been redeployed there.
During the counterattacks, the armed forces of Ukraine managed to advance 5 to 10 kilometers into the gray zone and regain control over 12 villages. In the eastern part of the Zaporizhzhia region, the deep state resource reports a general decline in the pace of the Russian army's advance in Ukraine to its lowest point in the past 10 months. Yes, it's slow. Russia has not advanced in Ukraine since the beginning of April last year.
Less than 36 square kilometers in a week. The last time the Russian army captured territory in Ukraine was during the week from March 31st to April 6th of last year, according to the deep state map. At that time, according to the project, 24 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory came under Moscow's control. News agency.
We have successfully developed the necessary capabilities to actually inflict significant and serious damage, according to a statement from a Russian military group, and to strike the enemy's operational rear at a distance of 20, 30, 40 or 50 kilometers from the line of combat engagement. And this leads to the destruction of the aggressor's forces in certain sections of the front.
In addition to changing the situation at the front and seizing the initiative, Ukrainian forces are delivering constant strikes against Russian oil refineries in the rear areas of the aggressor's territory. On the night of February 17th, a strike was carried out on the Ilsky oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai. The Ilsky oil refinery is one of the largest enterprises in the oil industry in southern Russia and plays an important role in the production of petroleum products and in supplying the Russian army. Such constant strikes on oil refineries are effectively destroying the aggressor's economy. Successes on the front and strikes on oil refineries are good cards to have on the negotiating table, and it seems that the Trump administration is tired of the Kremlin and is ready to accept Kyiv's position in the negotiations. Another Trump card is Russia's shadow fleet. The assistant to the president of the Russian Federation, Nikolai Patrushev, is already openly saying that if a peace agreement is not signed soon, attacks on tankers will only increase.
According to available data, such actions will intensify. Attacks on our ships and cargo will become more frequent. Nikolai Patrushev, assistant to the president of the Russian Federation.
So now there is a great opportunity to turn the course of negotiations in Ukraine's favor and secure peace on Kyiv's terms.
New intrigues are being spun by the bunker dweller's best friend. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has accused Ukraine of interfering in the Hungarian elections. Moreover, Hungary has approached Croatia regarding the supply of Russian oil after the transit through Ukraine was halted. What is really behind all these statements, and what is it this time? What has Hungary planned? All the details in the report.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban stated that the Ukrainian authorities are allegedly actively interfering in the Hungarian elections. He said this at a joint press conference with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Thus, Orban reported that the Ukrainian side is not indifferent to how the elections in Hungary will turn out, and that is why it has decided to take part in the election campaign. According to the Hungarian Prime Minister, not only opposition Hungarian politicians will become active participants in these elections.
But we must also consider the Ukrainian authorities and the current president of Ukraine himself, who are all involved in this situation. Hungarian, which refers to the language spoken in Hungary, is known for its unique grammar and vocabulary.
The Prime Minister also asserts that the government in Kiev is actively providing financial support to the political opponents of his party, according to his claims.
The Fidesz Hungarian Civic Alliance.
But political scientist Petro Liszczuk is sure that what is Orban talking about?
It is absolutely essential to ensure that every single surface is thoroughly scrubbed, completely sanitized and polished to an incredibly high standard of perfection before we can consider this job finished. Manipulation is a complex psychological strategy where one person seeks to influence the behavior or emotions of others through indirect, deceptive, or even underhanded tactics to gain an advantage. And yet absolutely no one calls this blatant election interference.
Orban has long been playing a game whose rules he invented himself.
Orban has simply taken a distinctly anti-Ukrainian stance and is trying to use this anti-Ukrainian position as the basis for his positioning in the elections. In other words, he is whipping up anti-Ukrainian hysteria and trying to sell this hysteria to the Hungarian voter. To be honest, I doubt this will work out very well. Orban has fostered terrible corruption in Hungary. This corruption is directly connected to the fact that he is becoming more and more dependent on Russia, on Russian oil, on Russian money. In other words, it's obvious that everything he does in order to get cheap Russian oil, then sell it and make money from it.
After the supply of oil from Russia through Ukraine via the Druzhba pipeline was halted, Hungary and Slovakia asked Croatia to arrange deliveries of Russian crude through the Adriatic pipeline. Janav, this was written on the social network X on Monday, February 16th by Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó.
This specific statement was officially posted on the social media network known as X this past Monday, February 16th, by the Hungarian Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Péter Szijjártó. He was addressing the critical situation regarding the Adriatic pipeline. He emphasized that the fundamental matter of the country's energy security, which directly includes our own national interests, simply cannot be treated as a matter of political or ideological debate. Therefore, we expect from the Croatians that, unlike Ukraine, they will not jeopardize the security of oil supplies to Hungary and Slovakia for the sake of
relating to the government and the various aspects of public affairs.
There are a wide variety of different reasons and complex underlying factors that contribute to this specific situation. The impossibility of carrying out such transportation, both Orban and the Slovak government explained the necessity of using the Druzhba oil pipeline.
The transportation of Russian crude oil through the Druzhba pipeline via Ukraine was halted since the end of last month due to large-scale Russian attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure. It was reported that the Russians struck one of the facilities in the Lviv region, which is connected to the Druzhba oil pipeline. Croatia, meanwhile, has stated that it is ready to help Hungary and Slovakia with oil transit, but not Russian oil, since it finances Russia's war against Ukraine. This was reported on the social network X by Croatia's Minister of Economy, Ante Šušnjar. He noted that Croatia is ready to help resolve issues with oil transportation, as long as this complies with European Union legislation and the conditions of US sanctions. After all, no one should be left without fuel. The country of Croatia
has acted appropriately and transparently on matters of regional energy security. And we will do so again for our Hungarian and Slovak friends, fully considering our Ukrainian allies and the severe hardships they are experiencing. The Adria pipeline is ready, so there are no longer any technical excuses for any EU country to remain dependent on Russian oil. A barrel bought from Russia may seem cheaper for some countries, but it finances the war and the attacks on the Ukrainian people. It's time to stop this war for the sake of profit. Infrastructure doesn't change overnight, but narratives sometimes do.
Well then, for now, all that's left is to grab some popcorn and wait for the reaction. From Hungary,
It turned out that in fact Russian oil can also be transported by sea. Then a logical question arises. If in fact oil can be delivered by sea, then Hungary loses its last argument that it previously used for why it needs Russian oil. They used to say that they could only receive Russian oil through the pipeline, that deliveries by sea would not be enough for them. Now it turns out that oil can be delivered by sea, but they specifically want Russian oil. But if you can get oil by sea, you can buy any other oil from any country in the world. Orban has simply exposed himself. What did this actually show? That all his previous policy about the impossibility of replacing Russian oil? It was all a lie. In reality, it's not about the impossibility of replacing Russian oil, but about the fact that it is specifically from Russian oil that Orban receives corrupt income.
And what do you think about the latest events? We look forward to your comments. Stay tuned for more and keep up with the main news. And don't forget to like. Wishing you peaceful skies above.